First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello everyone, this is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. We are live streaming here at the Fox 12 Oregon Newsroom. Thanks for joining us. We cover a wide range of topics, but right now what we're going to be talking about is the Northwest ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. And what we're going to be discussing is, with the holidays coming up, there are certain things that maybe people need to be thinking about, or maybe you haven't thought about it yourself and you're like, oh, what do I do for maybe to make sure that everybody feels accommodated and that everybody can participate? There's a lot to talk to with all of this and more, and we're doing so right now with, oops, John, I gave you the wrong screen there. There we go. It's not the background. But John, thank you for joining us here. John's the Assistant Director there for the Northwest ADA, and appreciate you joining us. And could you walk us through, maybe for anybody who doesn't know or needs a reminder, could you tell us about what the Northwest ADA is and maybe a bit about your role there too and how you got involved?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me, Greg. I'm the Assistant Director at the Northwest ADA Center. We're Region 10. The ADA centers are across the country, and there's 10 of them, and they were created pretty much shortly after the Americans with Disabilities Act was created. So they exist to help people understand what the ADA is and to encourage voluntary enforcement. So Region 10, we include Alaska, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. So if anyone ever calls the national hotline, when they call that 800-949-4232 number, it gets routed to us if their phone number is within that region. So like I'm originally from Florida. If I called with my 407 number, I'd be routed to the Southeast. So it's just the way the technology works. It routes, if your phone number is in our region, it comes to us.
Gotcha. And for people calling, what are some of the big reasons that people do call Northwest ADA?
Yeah, we get questions about everything related to the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's every day is something different. And it's really like personal experiences. Sometimes people may have a situation where it's very personal to them, like at the workplace. So the ADA has workplace protections, Title I. And the most common issue is workplace accommodations. If somebody has a disability, an employer, if they have 15 or more employees, there's an obligation to implement an accommodation so that if they can do the job, then maybe they just need some changes. And that it often happens where people, they know they need an accommodation, but they don't know how that process works. So they'll call us and we can walk them through that. Or they have an accommodation and the employer is going to change it. Well, sometimes people think, oh, what's happening is, can they do that? So yeah, they can, as long as the accommodations are effective, they can make some changes. So it's helping them understand what does the ADA require, and then walk them through some guidelines and some tips to help them navigate that process. And we get calls from ADA coordinators in different cities. They want to implement a project, or they're curious about what their ADA obligation is, and just looking to brainstorm tips. It happens oftentimes where there may be a temporary event, and we're thinking about doing this, and it's going to be outdoors, and have you run into these sort of best practices where you might give us some ideas? So it's an exciting kind of, every day is different, where our lives are pretty expansive, and the ADA touches on it in so many ways.
Yeah, so I mean, it really does seem like it's working from all different angles of that. Whether, as you mentioned, somebody who's hoping this place has accommodations or something's changing, and then from another standpoint of somebody doesn't know exactly how to accommodate. So that does sound exciting as far as different phone calls I would imagine every day of different things. Well, with the holidays coming up, what are the most common things that people may not realize, that they're not thinking about when it comes to having holiday gatherings and being ADA accessible?
Well, I would say the most common is this perception that we know what people's disabilities are, and especially if there are friends or in the workplace. There's so many invisible disabilities. where we may not really realize that somebody may need an accommodation and they just may not disclose it, or they may not acknowledge it themselves. Oftentimes you can feel very vulnerable to disclose that you have a disability. So for holiday gatherings, I think that it starts with the invitation. When you tell somebody, hey, we're going to have a party, we're having a gathering, or if it's a workplace, we're going to go to XYZ location for an office party, just put something, some mechanism in that invitation to let them know if you need an accommodation or if there's something you want to talk about, let us know, so that you can, I have a food allergy, or I have a mobility issue. Let's, make sure it is where's the parking if I have to minimize the amount of traveling I do to get into the facility. So the invitation is a great way of letting people know, because invisible disabilities are very prevalent. Food allergies is another one. It happens all the time where people, we go to, let's say we go to a party and we bring something. Like, I'm not a very good cook. I'll go to the store and I'll buy something, and I might put it in a separate container, say, well, here's some cookies that I brought. Well, that my separate container doesn't have the ingredients. So if somebody were to look at that, and they may not know, and if they have a peanut allergy, for example, and I mentioned peanuts because this exactly happened to a friend of mine who looked at some cookies and they were chocolate chip, but he didn't realize they also had cashews, and he had a pretty bad allergy to cashews. So being aware that people have invisible disabilities, and give them that information if they need it.
So making that line of communication available, just to be like, hey, just write me on the side. We don't have to do, if you don't want to, however you want to communicate it, but this is an open conversation, it seems like.
Right, absolutely. And then by putting it in the invitation and letting them know, you're letting them know you care, that you want them to feel comfortable and want them to feel like they're wanted at the gathering.
What are some common things that people can do at their parties or at their gatherings or whatever it may be here through the holidays to make sure, once it's going, that people are accommodated?
Well, great question. Make sure that people have access through, your entryway, and then look at your path of travel. If you're in your home, we've got stuff all over the place, right? We may not be aware of protruding objects. Sometimes people with a vision impairment, they may have a partial impairment, so they may not see very well on one side. And if a protruding object is coming, or it may be in the way, they may not see that. So just be aware of your path, and then protruding objects, and then think about the reach. If somebody is using a mobility device, or if they're in a wheelchair, have the items lower so that they can reach it and they don't have to reach higher. And then let them know, where's the restroom, make sure there's clear floor space around the areas. And then be mindful of sensory overload. Holiday gatherings can be very energetic, right? You're all excited, you're off work, or it's just a holiday time. And sometimes people just need a space where they can just go away and sort of decompress. So one party I went to, they had different rooms, different activities in different spaces. And so that quiet space was a dark room where they're showing movies, and it was known, okay, this is where you can just sort of decompress if you need to sort of wind down.
Gotcha. Have that space. Yeah. I think that's interesting. Yeah. Throw on a movie or something like that. And just that way everybody's a little bit quieter. Really interesting. Anything else, as we talk about this, just things that, again, that people may not consciously think about to make sure that they're being that accommodating, and also at the same time, maybe some recommendations for people who do need accommodations.
Well, I think it's the communication and making sure that you have the signage, and you sort of let people know in advance where to park, or what entrance to use, where would be the best space, and for people who have a disability, that just make sure you let them know that it's okay to speak out, or to voice any needs that you have. That's important.
For people out there, you mentioned at the top of this, but I want to reiterate it again, just for calling and getting a hold of you for advice on this, or help, or whatever it may be, interpreting things. What's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. The hotline is 800-949-4232, and then our email address is nwadaCTR@uw.edu. The Northwest ADA Center is based at University of Washington.
Anything else that you think is important, John?
Always give us a call if you ever have any doubt, any questions. We're happy to help.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time here on Fox 12 Now, for being here, to help get this word out and let people know, there's assistance if you need it, but just communication, it sounds like, is one of the biggest things of all of this. Yeah, open communication. Well, thanks, John. Thanks for being here.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having us.
And for everybody watching, again, this is Fox 12 Now. We are live streaming, so we're going to take a quick break in programming. You'll see one of our other shows here pop up on our website and our apps, but we will be back at 2 o'clock. We're going to be hearing from PGE about storm preparation for that potential windstorm that could be here on Wednesday, but a lot of other things also there on the Fox 12 Oregon app, so make sure you check in there and see all of our different segments. So we'll be back soon.